Most people don't realize how they've ended up where they are in life until they stop and think about it. For me, it was hitting 41 and looking back at being single for 7 years straight. Don't get me wrong, I was comfortable, had a good career, nice house, great family and friends, but the romantic companionship piece was definitely missing. It was just another Saturday night out with my buddy Mark playing darts at our usual hole-in-the-wall bar. We'd gotten partnered up on the board next to these two random dudes. "Hey, mind if we jump in?" The taller of the two asked once his friend had to take off. "Not at all, man. We're just messing around," Mark replied. "We'll call this guy James." James and I hit it off right away, cutting up and giving each other a hard time over missed throws. After Mark peaced out, James suggested grabbing an Uber back to his place to play some pool. Why the hell not? James' place was crazy nice, total man cave with a bar, pool table, dartboards, the whole 9 yards. As we were shooting pool and throwing back drinks, he asked me one of those questions that stopped me in my tracks. "So have you ever experimented with guys before?" I nearly choked on my beer. Me? Nah, man, never really crossed my mind, to be honest. James didn't miss a beat. No judgment here, just figured I'd ask. You seem like a pretty open-minded dude. I laughed it off, but that question stuck with me. We ended up closing his bar down, and I caught an Uber home around 3 a.m. But my mind was racing. Had I really never even considered messing around with a guy before? James was fit, funny, just an all-around good dude. Why did his question weird me out so much? Over the next few weeks, James and I became inseparable. We'd meet up at the bar after work, hang out at his place throwing darts or playing pool or just grabbing food and bullshitting. The more time I spent with him, the more I realized how effortless our friendship was. It was a Saturday when he invited me over to grill out, just the two of us. As we were knocking back beers and flipping burgers, he brought up that question again. "So, you ever make up your mind about maybe experimenting one of these days?" He asked with a sly grin. I played it off at first, busting his balls about being so hung up on it, but then I got real with him. "Honestly, man, I've thought about what you said that night, and I gotta admit, I'm curious." James just gave me this look and took a pull of his beer. The silence felt deafening until he finally said, "Well, all right then." My heart was pounding out of my chest. This was actually happening. I couldn't get that heavy silence out of my head after James responded, "Well, all right then." My curiosity was undeniable at this point, but I had no idea what to actually do about it. We finished our beers and fired up the Xbox, pretending like that waiting moment hadn't happened. But it was eating me alive. Every time James's leg brushed mine on the couch, it sent a shockwave through me. As he walked me out around midnight, I blurted out, "Look, man, I don't know what's going on with me lately, but I can't stop thinking about what you said." James just chuckled and stepped in close. "Dude, it's cool, I get it. Trust me, this is all new terrain for you." Before I knew it, his hand was on the back of my neck and he was kissing me. Not like a peck either. I'm talking full-on making out at the front door kind of kiss. When he finally pulled away, I just stood there dumbstruck. James gave me a wink and said, "Sleep on it, no pressure." As I climbed into my Uber, all I could think was, what the hell did I just get myself into? Sleeping on it was pretty much impossible after that mind-blowing kiss with James. I tossed and turned all night, replaying it over and over in my head. The feeling of his hand on my neck, his lips on mine, the slight scratch of his beard. I'd never imagined myself in that kind of situation, but now it was all I could think about. I tried going about my normal routine, hitting the gym, meal prepping, calling my mom, but James was constantly creeping into my thoughts. Every little thing made me think of him, seeing a guy at the gym who looked sort of similar, catching a rerun of a TV show we liked, even passing the freaking beer aisle at the grocery store. I finally caved around Wednesday and texted him. "You free this weekend? Trying to play it cool, like making out with your buddy was just another Saturday plan." The 3 little dots bounced for a while before he responded. "First, my place Saturday around 7. Bring a bottle of wine." I started counting down the hours immediately. Whatever this was, I needed to explore it. My curiosity had fully taken over. Saturday night couldn't come soon enough. Saturday finally rolled around and I was a ball of nerves. I picked up a nice Cabernet on my way over to James's place, mind racing with what could possibly happen tonight. As casually as I could, I strolled up and rang the doorbell. James answered with a big smile. Well, look who's here for his Funuality 101 course. I laughed and rolled my eyes as I stepped inside, already feeling more at ease. Pour me a glass of that and maybe I'll stay for the lecture. We sipped our wine and fell into the same easygoing banter as always. But there was an undercurrent, a tension simmering between us. James's foot would graze my leg as we laughed at silly YouTube videos. I'd catch him giving me these lingering looks when I wasn't paying attention. Finally, he set his glass down. "All right, stud, you've played it cool long enough," he said with a grin. "Get over here." The next thing I knew, James had pulled me onto his lap and was kissing me deeply, his hands roaming all over. This was really happening, and I was indisputably 100 into it. I matched his intensity, letting my hands explore his body for the first time. We came up for air, both a little dazed. "How are those curiosities doing?" he murmured with a smirk. I just grabbed him by the shirt and pulled him back in. Things escalated quickly after that searing kiss. Clothes started getting tugged off, hands began roaming everywhere. I couldn't believe this was actually happening, but I didn't want to overthink it. I just wanted to go with what felt ridiculously good. James took control, pushing me back on the couch and straddling my waist. He trailed hot, open-mouthed kisses down my neck and chest as I grabbed a fistful of his hair. This whole situation was so wild and new, but felt incredibly right at the same time. I flipped him onto his back, taking my turn to explore his body with my hands and mouth. James let out these guttural groans of pleasure that just spurred me on more. Who knew being with a guy could be this crazy intense? We must have carried on like that for hours, just getting body drunk on each other. Every heated makeout, every intense groping session felt like an entirely new thirst finally being quenched. When we both finally lay there spent, James pulled me in close. "Well," he murmured, "how'd that experimentation session go for you?" I shot him a sleepy smile. I'd say it went pretty fucking great, but I've got a feeling we're just getting started. Over the next few weeks, James and I were inseparable in every sense of the word. Any free moment was spent tangled up together, exploring this new crazy chemistry between us. I'd wake up at his place after another marathon funnuality session, hair still mussed from the previous night's activities. James would already be in the kitchen making eggs, walking around in just his boxer briefs like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Morning, stud," he'd grin when he caught me ogling him. "Get your ass out here and get some breakfast." We spend lazy days like that, catching up on Netflix or just shooting the shit over coffee. Then the second we were alone, bam, all over each other again like horny teenagers. I could not get enough. Nights out with my buddy Mark, and his wife took on a whole new dimension now that James was in the picture too. The two of them had no idea about our extracurriculars when they'd catch James and I exchanging secret, loaded looks across the table. We'd have to take bathroom breaks to sneak off and paw at each other like a couple of rabbits. "Dude, what has gotten into you two lately?" Mark laughed one night as James and I got back to the table, hair mussed and lips swollen. I just shrugged and threw James a wink. What can I say? We're really hitting it off. As crazy as it seemed, James and I just kept heating up. We were full-blown, can't keep our hands off each other, smitten. But there was one major person in my life who still had no clue. My sister Jen. Jen and I have always been tight, so it was only a matter of time until I spilled the beans. It happened one weekend when she roped me into helping her move apartments. We were hauling her stuff into the U-Haul when she finally asked, "Okay, spill it. You've been walking around with this big dumb grin for weeks now. Who is she?" I tried playing it cool at first, telling her I'd met someone new that had me pretty stoked. But she could read me like a book. Pretty soon I was pulling over at a rest stop so I could confess everything. I told her all about meeting James, how it started as this wild curiosity that quickly blazed into full-blown funnuality. I even pulled up the long saga I'd been posting on Reddit, looking for advice and support from internet strangers. Jen's eyes were the size of saucers by the end, but she just drunked me in the biggest hug. "Oh my God, Marcus, I'm so proud of you for trusting yourself like this." She made me feel like a $1,000,000 bucks in that moment. No more holding it in or complicating things. This was my true self, and my sister had my back completely. All that was left was for James to meet the fam. So my sister knew all about James now, every little detail, or she was totally in our corner about the whole thing. And "Don't overthink it," she texted me once. "This is your shot at happiness, bro. I'm so stoked for you." The next hurdle was introducing him to the rest of my life. my buddy Marcus, who still thought we were just golf pals getting a new membership somewhere. Hey man, got an important call coming in. I fibbed, putting James on speaker. This is my boyfriend. Say hi. Marcus's side of the line was dead air for a moment. Your boyfriend? Yeah, man, ain't he a stud? James jumped in with no hesitation, expecting a foursome any time now to really get wild. I couldn't believe how chill James was joking about all this already. He filled in the blanks perfectly. We've been taking it slower than cable internet, but we're still totally thrilled with each other. Marcus, ever the good-humored pal, rolled with it like a champ, too. Well, damn, make sure you crazy kids double up on protection then. He laughed once we'd reassured him we weren't a weird virus spreader house or anything. Truth was, I was more than comfortable bringing my whole real person out around James already. He'd surprised me with just how quickly he was 100 himself, introducing me as his boyfriend during a random grocery run to grab steaks. Oh, this is Marcus. Oh, right, you two haven't met yet. I told you about him though, right, babe? I about melted over that sultry babe call. Yeah, winning over my family wouldn't be an issue at all. So Marcus was all caught up on us as a Jimmo. As Jen so cleverly hashtagged our situation. The next natural step was introducing my boyfriend to my family, seeing how they'd all react, and let me tell you, James kept it pretty chill about the whole thing. Don't get too worked up about it. He texted me ahead of the big carb-loaded family dinner Mama Carolina was cooking up. We'll play it cool, act naturally. You know, like we're just two dudes who simply enjoy deserving each other's desserts, if you know what I mean. That was meant as some sort of weird innuendo about us being open bisexual icons or whatever. I knew better than to try decoding it too much. Dude was smirking proudly at 2 when he sent that one. In the moment, his laughter was what kept me grounded as the whole fam got a peek into my newly reformed identity. As an out bisexual adult man with the confidence to bring my famous homemade desserts home to meet Alberta's Tamal expertise taste test. Last, my masterful churro craftsmanship shall be recognized by blood relations. He folks toasted over video chat, winking at the camera. Beles gustaria un poco de crema también. That was when I knew it was already too late to feel scandalized or overly tense about this phase of openness. If my conservative, but not uncool, parents were going to accept me as I was, for nudities and all, they'd just have to get over the shock factor of Jalmus's sooner or later in their own way. So the family had met James, my sweet and inappropriately flirty boyfriend, and they were handling it about as well as could be expected. Mom kept giving me these loaded looks whenever James would make some off-color joke about eating dessert first or whatever, but Dad surprised me by actually cracking a smile at his antics. This one's a real character, son, he'd murmur as James was off getting another beer. Wouldn't have picked him for your, type, but he seems like a good enough fella. My praise coming from a traditional machismo type. I wasn't sure whether to feel vindicated or just roll with the awkwardness for now. James didn't make it any easier, to be fair. He was laying the inappropriate comments on thick probably just to gauge how much he could get away with. Sooner or later he'd have to chill on that shtick if he wanted to make a good longer-term impression. But then, did I really expect anything less from the guy whose opening line was asking if I was into funnuality? One night, as we were getting undressed in his bedroom, I finally got the nerve to bring it up. Hey, so, do you think you're maybe coming on a little strong with all the wink-wink stuff in front of my parents? James just grinned and pulled me close, that devilish look in his eye. What? You don't think they're ready for me to fully express our funnual identities? Maybe I should strip down and make them some authentic churros to really seal the deal. I rolled my eyes, but I was laughing too. What could I do? This was James Adenall, and I was nuts about it. All things were moving faster than I could have ever anticipated with James. One minute we were just buddies bonding over drinks and darts. The next he had me hooked on this whirlwind of funnuality and relationship realness. Looking back now, I should have seen the red flags sooner. The way he pushed me to be so out and open about us with my family and friends, it was like he was living vicariously through me coming to terms with this side of myself. Whereas for him, the thrill was in flaunting it as loudly and proudly as possible. I tried not to judge at first. We all process this kind of self-discovery differently, right? If James needed to gay it up to fully exude his truth, more power to him. And those early weeks and months were so electrically charged, both emotionally and physically, that I simply rode that lightning bolt wherever it took us. But then little things started nagging at me. He'd get tense anytime my phone pinged with a text, snatching it away to check it before I could see who it was from. Or he'd be vague about making plans, only to get suspiciously dolled up for his night out. Excuses about working late became flimsier and flimsier and flimsier. I knew in my gut where it was heading. I'd been the dumbstruck dude in this story before, letting myself get fool blind to the obvious signs an ex was checking out greener pastures. But I was too twisted up in the giddiness of this newfound funny awakening to really confront it head on. At least not until I made the boneheaded mistake of going through James's damn phone while he was passed out one night. I shouldn't have gone snooping, I know that. But the nagging suspicion was just eating me alive at that point. James had been distant for days, making flimsy excuses about work commitments keeping him occupied. We used to text throughout the day relentlessly, that endless trail of inside jokes and playful banter. Now it was just radio silence. So yeah, I did the inadvisable thing and went through his damn phone while he was zonked out after another one of his famous long nights. I told myself it would just be a quick scroll through his messages to put my mind at ease. But the second I pulled up his text, bam, there it was. A conversation with some rando making overtly flirtatious comments about getting together soon. Saucy pics both ways. My heart just stopped. The more I looked, the worse it got. Not just one chat box like that, but multiple, dozens of them, spanning apps and platforms I didn't even know existed for that kind of thing. All while we were still doing the whole loved-up couple act whenever we were face-to-face. I wanted to puke, or cry, or both, really. How could I have been so unbelievably naive through all of this? Yeah. When James finally did roll over and catch me there, phone in hand, the look of pure panic and guilt on his face said it all. We both knew, in that moment, that things were irreparably shattered between us. All I could muster was a defeated how many. As I held up his phone, countless offenses staring back at me through the screen. The silence pretty much spoke volumes. James didn't even try denying anything, not that he could. I grabbed my things and walked, leaving him there to wallow. It was like the brutal slap in the face I needed to jolt me back to reality. I spent the next few days just numb, mechanically going through the motions of my daily routine. Like an automaton, work, gym, eat, repeat. The basics were there, but the rest of me felt hollowed out in the wake of that soul-crushing discovery. Everywhere I turned, there were reminders of James and what we'd had together. That booth at the pub where we first bonded over bad tequila shots. The cozy couch in his man cave where we'd spend entire weekends intertwined. Hell, I could hardly set foot in my own bedroom without flashing back to those electrifying early trysts, wrestling and tearing at each other's clothes like horny teenagers. A piece of me wanted to burn it all down, cauterize every last trace of him from my life in one righteous blaze of fury. But another part knew that as devastating as this betrayal was, erasing James entirely would be erasing the awakening he sparked in me too. For better or worse, my funnuality was a fully ignited part of my identity now because of him. The exhilarating self-discoveries, the shame-free freedom of trusting my desires, those were mine to keep, even if the dipshit who kick-started them turned out to be a liar and a cheat. I couldn't change a single moment of how we met or how our roller coaster played out, as raw as those wounds still felt. What I could change was how I chose to move forward, armored up by the self-truth I'd finally allowed myself to accept. Those first few weeks of solitude after kicking James' scrawny ass to the curb were a blur of sadness, anger, then gradual acceptance. Marcus, the real ones in my crew, they had my back through all of it without judgment. A few drunken I told you so jabs here and there, but nothing malicious. More than anything, they wanted to see me dusting myself off and carrying on, head held high. And carry on I did, step by step. I re-downloaded Grindr, updated my profile pics with some new thirst traps, and put myself back out there into the fun wilds, battle-tested but none too jaded to open myself up again. That's just life, isn't it? The low lows make you respect the hell out of those hard-won highs when they finally hit. And with every new prospect, every flirtatious exchange, I felt that spark within me flaring up anew, a little wiser this time around, but still hungry to explore where the journey could take me next. I had James to thank for that awakening, as much as I may resent the deception in the end. This updated, proudly out and funny version of myself was real and here to stay, scars and all. Bring on the next adventure.